Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you all for joining us for this live presentation. So, our today's topic will be end-of-life support for SharePoint 2010 and 2013, and well, what to do next. So, my name is Silvio. I'm a sales executive here at Syskit, and here with me we have my colleague Igor, who will be actually showing you a demo, well, in just a minute. So as many of you already know us as a company, but some of you still don't. So let me give you kind of a quick introduction. So Syskit is a software company that was founded more than 10 years ago. We're currently developing products for Office 365 governance, as well as administration and monitoring solutions for SharePoint on-prem. So we currently have more than 3,000 customers in over 75 countries worldwide. And well, some of them are quite famous, as you can see from our slide here. We currently have 5 products, including our award-winning SPDocKit for on-prem, which we are talking about, well, actually today, as well as Syskit Point for Office 365 governance and security, which is, well, where the future is headed. Before we start, let us just go through a few housekeeping rules. So all registrants will receive a recording of this session, well, within a few days after the demo. And after Igor's presentation and this SPDocKit demo, we will have a Q&A session where you can actually ask any questions you might have. For asking the questions, please feel free to use the Q&A function on the right top of the screen and ask your actual questions throughout, well, basically throughout the entire session. Whenever you want, please don't be shy. So I will now turn things over to my colleague, Igor, and well, for the part that you're all interested in, the demo. Igor, are you ready?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for this nice introduction, Sylvia. Can you see me and hear me and see my screen maybe?
I can see you perfectly, and I'm just waiting for I can see your screen now as well. Yeah, you're free to proceed.
Okay, great. Then we're set and we can go. So thank you all for joining us today when we talk about the end of extended support for SharePoint 2010. And of course, we'll mention also other SharePoint on-premises versions as well. I will show you the next steps when you move forward and how you can utilize SPDocKit to help you prepare for an upgrade or migration. I will accompany all of the SPDocKit related topics, of course, with a short demo. We have a lot of things to cover, so let's just start. Okay, so first of all, for all of those who are not familiar with SPDocKit, just a quick intro. So we started in 2009 just as a simple documentation tool, but since then we have grown to be much, much more. As you can see on this screen, we also offer the SharePoint Analytics reports. You can also manage permissions. You can compare forms, check if your form is configured correctly, and much, much more. Part of these features I will also show you today. Okay, so next to the main topic of today's webinar, so end of extended support for SharePoint 2010 and all other versions, of course. So SharePoint 2010 product family will no longer be supported by Microsoft after April 13th this year. But there's a question, what does that exactly mean? But first, some basics. So SharePoint 2010 and all other SharePoint versions are actually covered by Microsoft's fixed lifecycle policy. And this has 2 phases. So we have the mainstream support and extended support. The first one includes security updates, incident support, and you can also request from Microsoft to issue some non-security updates. While the extended support only offers free security updates. So after this date for SharePoint 2010, there will be no further security updates. Therefore, if you keep using the SharePoint 2010 products, you will be exposed to a huge security risk. Because of that, of course, Microsoft gives 2 obvious paths that you can move forward. So migration to Microsoft 365, and of course, upgrading to a higher version of on-premises. Okay, let's move to the next slide. So here are also some important dates that expect you in the future. So for SharePoint 2013, we are already in the extended support phase. So this will end in April 2023. For SharePoint 2016, we have mainstream support until July this year. And for the extended support, it lasts until July 2026. As you can see, we still have around 3 years for SharePoint 2019 mainstream support, but SharePoint 2019 has a bit shorter extended support period, 2 years instead of 5. Microsoft explained that they actually are moving their efforts to better support the online community, so that's the result of that. And just an additional thing that you should keep in mind if you're going to upgrade to the next version of SharePoint on premises, that another upgrade is waiting just around the corner, because the next version of SharePoint server on premises is scheduled for the second half of this year. Okay, so let's just take a brief look at the two options that you have when you move forward from SharePoint 2010. So pretty obvious, a lot of companies are doing it. It's migration to Microsoft 365. So moving to cloud is really popular these days, probably even more because of the pandemic. And it's quite obvious why people are deciding to do that. Well, you get the latest features. You don't need to upgrade or patch up or install security updates to receive those latest features. And of course, you don't need to worry about the maintenance of the hardware. But on the other side, you don't have control over underlying resources. So if Microsoft is having an outage, then of course you cannot really do anything about it. You have to wait that they fix the issue and that you can keep on working in Microsoft 365. On the other hand, if you decide to upgrade, well, you will have complete control over your environment. So you will control the hardware, and you can maybe fix the outages, potential outages, more quickly. You can also do some customizations to the SharePoint code itself that you cannot maybe do in the Microsoft 365 environment. And of course, a lot of companies are still concerned with the data being kept in some servers that they don't have in-house. With SharePoint on premises, of course, you have data on your own servers. Of course, with all that control comes also higher operational and maintenance costs. So what are the next steps, and what should you do even before you decide to migrate or upgrade? I will show you some of the use cases here today where SPDocKit will help you when you plan and prepare for the migration or upgrade. All of these projects are actually quite big, so it is essential that you spend a substantial amount of time on preparation and planning. And this is also a great opportunity for you to clean all of the things that you don't really use. So it's not really a smart move if you move everything, and with that, all the things that you don't really need anymore. So with SPDocKit, you can create an inventory of the things you have in your SharePoint farm. You can also explore all of the customizations that might be a roadblocker when you, for example, move to Microsoft 365. You can also find all the content that is used or not used. And you can also find all of the administrators, so site collection administrators, who can help you with the migration or the upgrade. So I'll talk about all of these points on a separate slide, and after each slide, I will show you a demo in SPDocKit. So first of all, creating the inventory of things that you have in your farm. So as I said, it is important that you see what you're dealing with so you can better plan your time and the budget, of course. And with SPDocKit, you can see all of your farms. You can see all of the web applications, site collections, and even deeper down to file level, but we'll discuss that in the content part. And you can also list all your servers and see installed patches and updates. Maybe that's not really critical now for SharePoint 2010 to see all the patches installed, since we are moving away from SharePoint 2010. But for example, for SharePoint 2013, it is quite useful information to see if you have everything patched up as you should. Okay, so let me show you how does that look like in SPDocKit. So first of all, let me tell you just that SPDocKit is actually, so to say, a snapshot-based tool. So each time you take a snapshot, you actually gather all of the data that SPDocKit is using for reports and all other things that are available in SPDocKit. So I will here open a snapshot first. You see I have many of them. And I will switch straight away to the farm information report. And as you can see here, you can find the version of SharePoint that is installed on that server. And just to show you here on the right side, if you have multiple farms, you can always simply and quickly select another farm. For example, here I have SharePoint 2010 farm and my latest farm, SharePoint 2019. So I can easily switch between them and see all the information for the farm that I want to see. So this is the first report, just some basic information. If we move further on, we can see the servers list report. So here I can see all of the servers that are available in my SharePoint farm. If I'm more of a visual type, I will switch to these two reports, so topology reports, that show me a graphic representation of all of my servers in my farm. So I can see the database tier, I can see the web tier, and so on. And for the site topology, here I have displayed all of the web applications and underlying site collections in my SharePoint farm. The next thing you can do is find all of your web applications here easily. If I switch to the web applications list report, and I can click here to access it through the browser. The same thing I have here with the site collections list report for the site collections, where I can easily access all of my site collections. But what's also important to see all the administrators. So maybe later on we will see if I discover that some of the site collections are not really used, maybe I can contact that administrator and see if this site collection can be, for example, deleted and I have less things to migrate or upgrade. And the last report that I want to show you here is the patch status. As I mentioned, I will switch to SharePoint 2010 here. As I mentioned, here you can see all of the security updates that are installed. So as I said, maybe not so important for the SharePoint 2010, now that you're moving away from it, but for other farms, surely. Okay, that's the first part. I will switch now back to the presentation. Guys, just give a shout if I mixed something up, because I have a lot of servers here, so it's quite tricky to move around that. Okay, the next thing that we can discover with SPDocKit are the customizations. So if you're moving to the cloud, make sure that you thoroughly analyze all your custom solutions, because some things cannot be simply migrated to Microsoft 365. For example, you cannot migrate farm solutions And if you want to keep them, you will have to rewrite them for the SharePoint add-in model version. Also, the same is true for the code-based sandbox solutions. So that were the solutions that you could deploy on your site collections, and these are also no longer supported, and you will need to replace them with SharePoint add-ins. The next thing that was retired are the workflows, so SharePoint 2010 workflows. And if you move to Microsoft 365, you will have to rewrite them for Power Automate. And last but not least, the info platforms, which were deprecated in SharePoint 2019. So you will also have to rewrite them with the Power Apps. So I will switch now to the demo. Okay, I'm sorry to say, but I lost connection to that server. Just let me try to connect again. I'm sorry, but these things happen, you know, when you have a live demo. Okay, here we are, thankfully. So let me switch to the solutions report. So we are still here in the Farm Explorer section, and I'm here on the solutions report. And here I can see all of my solutions that I have deployed or not deployed in my farm. And this is nice, and but it doesn't really provide me with much information because I need to decide if something is used or not. So I can watch further and see the scope of these solutions. So for example, I see that some of them are actually deployed on web applications. But the most value you will get with the feature usage reports, where you can see if somebody is actually consuming these solutions. So as I can see here, I have a solution, and in the last, I believe I defined it for 19 days. So in the last 90 days, just one person consumed this solution and used it. So I will have to think twice to actually move that or migrate or rewrite that solution for Microsoft 365. The next thing I want to show you are the workflow reports. So workflows are a big theme these days, and well, you have to decide if you will migrate that to Microsoft 365. So if you find something is useful to you and the people are using it, then you will have to rewrite it with Power Automate. So as I can see here on this report, I have a workflow that was recently active, so maybe I will have to rewrite that for Microsoft 365. As you can see with others, I'm not so sure if I will migrate them because, of course, nobody's using them. The next report around workflows is the workflow templates report. And here I can see all of the templates that I have in my SharePoint form. And I can also see additional settings that are here for each of the templates. And the last report around workflows is the workflow associations. And here I can see all of my workflow templates and where are they actually associated, so to which SharePoint object. For example, here I see that I have a couple of them associated on the subsites and list. And of course, I can easily access also here in this column, I have all of the links to the workflow history list where I can see more details about every run of a workflow. And here in the last column, but I can also switch this column to the front if I want to, I can see the last activity, so when this workflow was actually used. Okay, that's it for this section. Let's move on to the content. So you know that migration is by itself a huge task, but if you move something that you really don't use, it's even a bigger task. And to ensure that you don't move anything that is not used, you can use SPDocKit to help you find that kind of content. So SPDocKit will give you a complete SharePoint structure down to the file level, and you will be able to also easily find inactive sites, subsites, lists, and even documents. Also, what you have is the storage metrics report, where you can see all of your content databases and what is actually in them. So which site collections have data in which content database. So if you move to cloud, also you need to remember that a flatter content structure is awaiting. So you probably won't have as many levels of subsites as you used to have in the SharePoint on-premises environment. And you have hub sites, and with them you can create some kind of flexible hierarchies with site collections instead of subsites. Okay, so I'll switch back to SPDocKit. And the first thing I will do is to switch to the analytics and usage reports section here. And I will start with the farm level. So here, a quick overview for my entire farm. So how many visitors were on my farm the last 7 days. And I can also see the total number of hits. So how many pages they opened or document that they opened and so on. And what's concerning here is that I have only 7 active site collections from total number of 27 site collections. I can also see a nice graph here, and this will tell me through the last 7 days and even further, as long as I'm collecting data with SPDocKit, I can see how my visitors and visits were on these days. So if I'm interested in more details, I can always drill a level deeper. So here we are on the site collection level. So I have the site collection analytics report. Here I can also see the total number of hits and visitors, but per site collection. I can also see additional information here. So the size of a specific site collection, how many active subsites were in that site collection, and when it was last accessed and when was the content modified. So I also have this graph here that can show me a trend if there's any of, for example, if I have unexpected number of hits on some days. I can drill down further and see the same data for subsite level. So I'm now here on the subsite analytics level, and I can see the total hits and visitors and when it was last accessed, of course. I can even go deeper, and I can also see the document analytics report and see which documents were actually active, so modified and viewed. Just a short notice, so the views are actually not available in SharePoint 2019 because Microsoft decided to remove some audit logs that we collected, but for SharePoint 2013 and 16, you still have that option to view this data. Moving forward, I mentioned the SharePoint structure. So here on the SharePoint structure report, you can easily see the whole structure down to the file level or document level for each of the site collections. Here on the right side, you can change what you want to see, and also, of course, you can change site collections or even choose multiple. I'll just stick with my site collection that I'm exploring, so I can see everything down to file level. And that can be pretty useful because here I can see that I have a lot of subsites, and maybe if I migrate to Microsoft 365, some of that content will go into Microsoft 365 groups or maybe even Microsoft Teams. The next report that I want to show you here is the inactive subsites report. Here up where we looked at the analytics, here the focus was more on active content, but here in the inactive subsites and the later reports that I will show you, the focus is on the inactive content. So here I can find all of the inactive subsites, and I can also see when the subsite was last accessed and the content modified. I can also find who's, so to say, responsible for that subsite and contact them and make sure that I don't remove anything before I make sure that this is not used anymore. I can also here on the right side select the dates, so how long a subsite needs to be inactive to be shown in this report. Okay, moving on to the lists, unmodified lists report. Here I can see all of the lists that were not modified in a while. So these are also potential candidates for removal before I do any of migration. Okay, the last report on this server that I want to show you is the storage metrics report. And just don't mind these percentages because this is mock data. So something unusual like percentages above 100% are shown here, but don't mind that. But this report is actually great because it shows you how the site collections are actually using up your storage. So here you can see that most of my storage is actually used by a single file. I have some backup that is 2 gigabytes large, and I will also consider when migrating to get rid of documents like that because I will spend a lot of time to migrate all of that. If I'm just concentrated on the documents, I can skip to the large documents report, and here I can just see the list of all of the documents that are larger than 50 megabytes. Excuse me. Okay, I will now switch to another server if that works. So there's an additional set of reports that I want to show you just here, but I don't have data for that in the newer farm. So the old list items report can help you find all of the old list items. So these are also potential candidates to get rid of before you migrate. Well, of course, I would contact the author to see if these documents or list items are actually used before I remove them, but it's a high probability here. The same with the old documents. So instead of list items, I have here the documents, but similar data, so I can see all the old documents. Oh, sorry, just to move back to the presentation and a sip of water. Okay. So the last thing that I want to talk about before actually you migrate or upgrade is the access review. So you can, with SPDocKit, you can find all of the objects that have broken permission inheritance. You can also detect inactive SharePoint groups. You can find all of the users and their access to SharePoint objects that you have in your farm. And of course, SPDocKit will help you discover current administrators who can help you with the migration or upgrade. So there's quite a great potential here because you can also manage all of that permissions. So if something's not as it's supposed to be, if somebody is having access to SharePoint objects that they shouldn't, you can quickly and easily change that. And let me go to my server again to show you that in SPDocKit. So first thing I want to show you here is the Permissions Explorer. As you can see here, I can take a look at all of my content structure. And beside that, on the right side, I have all of the users and their permissions listed here. Just to show you an example, so if I select an object that has broken permission inheritance, here I have in the upper ribbon a lot of permission actions that I can run here. So I can maybe edit permissions for the existing users, or maybe I can grant permissions for someone new. If I'm not sure about these actions and what I need to do, what an action will do for me. I also have a simpler way to do that if you're new to the permission management. So I have these wizards here. So for example, I can add a specific user to a specific group and so on. Beside that, I also have here a cleanup wizard, which can help me to delete some of the users and groups that I'm sorry, that are not really used in the SharePoint farm. So for example, I can delete users without permissions or delete SharePoint groups that have no users in them. So this is quite a powerful tool to have and to manage your permissions here. Except of that, we also have the permissions reports here. So let me start with our star here. So well-known permission matrix report, where you can see all of the users and permissions listed here. So beneath all the SharePoint objects, I have the users, security groups, and SharePoint groups. And in the columns, I have the permission levels that they have assigned here. The next report I want to show you is the unique permissions report. So here I can see all of the SharePoint objects that have broken permission inheritance. If you have a situation like here, so a lot of levels that have broken permission inheritance, maybe some of you know, but this is really not the way you do it. So it is suggested that you actually share with the help of permission of SharePoint groups, and that you don't break the permission inheritance so often. So when I do an access review, I will definitely make sure that I get rid of some of that. And I can easily do that by clicking or selecting a SharePoint object and click the Explore Permissions, which will take me to the Permissions Explorer that I showed you before, and here I can perform some actions. We have some additional reports here in the Permissions Reports section that you might find useful, but I will just mention the Users with Privileged Access report, where you can find, for example, all of the site collection administrators that will help, who can help you when you migrate. So for example, the site collection that I explored in today's demo, here I can see easily all of the site administrators on that site collection. Okay, let's move on. So, okay, great. Now we prepared for the migration and upgrade, and you will spend some amount of time, of course, on that project. But after you upgrade, you can also utilize SPDocKit to help you when you have a new SharePoint farm or a new version of SharePoint farm. So you can, the first thing you might do is you want to compare if you configured your new farm correctly. So you can compare between the old farm and the new farm configuration. You can also check if you configured the farm according to the best practices. So that's one of the things that SPDocKit enables you to easily do. And of course, it is also advisable that you perform access reviews periodically so that you make sure that right people have access to right content. Of course, when you switch to a new farm or upgrade to a new farm, you will have to document your farm regularly. So when anything is changed, you need to document that. And as I also demoed before, you also can use the cleanup wizards to keep your farm clean and healthy. So let me just jump on the demo again. Okay, so here we are again in SPDocKit, and I'll just show a quick example of the compare wizard. So we can compare a lot of things here, not just farm configurations, but I'll stick to this one. But you can also compare between servers, web applications, site collections, and even permissions. And here I will select the comparison between two different farms, of course, because I upgraded from SharePoint 2010 to SharePoint 2019. And as I said, since SPDocKit is snapshot based, I will need to select snapshots that I want to use for the comparison. Here I also have a lot of different options what to ignore when comparing or not. I can also choose which old server to compare to which new server. I can also choose the accounts that I want to compare. So these are the accounts that are used for service applications, of course. And I can define mappings also for service applications and service application proxy. The last thing I can define are the mappings between the source hostname and the target hostname. So once I'm done with that wizard, I will get a compare report. As you can see, I have the old snapshot and old farm here on the left side, and on the right side, my new farm. And as I said, I'm interested in services. So I want to see if all of services that I used in my old farm are actually configured correctly here. So I will go to my server that I know was the front-end server, and I can see that application discovery and load balancer service was online, and in my new farm it is disabled. So I will need to do some corrections to enable that. So that way you can compare a lot of different things as you see here for each of the farms, and then take some corrective actions if needed. And the last thing I want to show you today in SPDocKit, I promise I will not bother you further, is the set of best practices reports. So these are actually reports that compare the current configuration of your SharePoint farm to some of the Microsoft best practices. So suggestions how to configure your farm. I will just show a quick example here. For example, I have the hardware requirements category here, and all of the red numbers actually show some of the issues that I have. So for example, if I click here, I can see that some of my servers don't have enough free space on the disk. So I can see here what is actually what does that actually mean, not having enough disk space, so less than 80 gigabytes. I can of course customize these values here per each SharePoint version. So that these reports can help you configure your farm to be in accordance to Microsoft best practices and to run as smooth as possible, of course. Okay, I'll switch back to my presentation now and just to show you and mention a couple of new tools that we have here. So if you decide to migrate to Microsoft 365, we also got you covered there. We have two new tools you can use. So Syskit Point, which is a governance platform created to help you ensure transparency of access. And of course, with the help of Syskit Point, you can automate some of the tasks that you may do from day to day. And with Syskit Trace, you have the some might say similar abilities as with SPDocKit. So you can document your Microsoft 365 configuration, and you can easily track changes in time. It's also snapshot based, so you can do some comparisons. And that's it from me. I hope you liked it. I hope you learned something new today. And if you want to see a full demo of any of these tools that I mentioned, just give us a shout, reach us, and our teams love to talk about our tools, of course. and to hear what you have in mind, some suggestions or anything else. And this is it. I will give it back now to Silvio, and I'll answer questions if you have any.
Thank you, Igor. I mean, this was a great presentation. I'm sure the attendees liked everything they saw, everything you showed them, and you even gave them kind of a route where to go in the future if they move to Office 365. Guys, keep an eye on the other webinars that we're going to be doing, and they're going to be on those two tools that Igor mentioned, actually, Syskit Trace and Point. So, yeah. Okay, as Igor said, now is the time for the Q&A session. Feel free to ask the questions. Well, even during the session, it's never too late. And yeah, let's check some of those that we actually have here. Okay, so first we're going a bit technical regarding the deployment, Igor. So when installing SPDocKit, does the database have to live on the same server as the on-prem database?
You're asking if, just to see if I understood it correctly. So if the SPDocKit database is on the same server as SharePoint databases, or?
I would say that Rick here is asking exactly this. So does SPDocKit database need to be on the same server where the on-premise
No.
database is?
Just on contrary, we suggest not to do that. So we like to keep them separated.
Okay, great. The next one pretty much related to the databases, again from Rick. So can I use SQL Express, SQL Server Express? So this free edition.
Well, for testing purposes, I would say yes, but for some really production environment, I wouldn't suggest doing that because, you know, it's limited in the performance. So we would suggest going with the full SQL Server.
Rick just confirmed actually that, yeah, the first question we've understood it correctly. So yeah, we're
Okay,
good.
great.
Okay, going next, we can go to, okay, let's say, so how often can SPDocKit snapshots be scheduled?
So you can schedule the snapshots to be run automatically, or you can run them manually. So if you run them manually, you can do that anytime you please. And if you do that with the automation, then I believe the shortest period between snapshots is daily 4 hours, I believe. But I can confirm that afterwards.
Okay, sure. I think this should be good enough. Feel free to write down if it's not. Okay, so how far back can you compare farm configurations?
So as long as you have a snapshot, you can compare them. It doesn't matter if you have a snapshot that's older than a year, and a new snapshot, you can compare them, of course. But you will have a lot of differences, I believe, there.
Okay, and well, the last one we're gonna do today. So can I manage the permission for groups as well, not just users?
Yeah, you can manage permissions for users, for SharePoint groups, and security groups. So it's basically all there on the Permissions Explorer that I displayed before.
Okay, thank you, Igor. Guys, thank you for asking the questions. If any other should pop out, this is like when you say on weddings, you know, say it now or yeah, I'm just joking. So yeah, I guess this is gonna be our last question for today, so we can slowly wrap up the session. So once again, thank you all guys for joining. As mentioned, everyone who's registered for this is gonna receive well, the recording of this in a matter of days or well, sometime next week at latest. If you have any additional questions or maybe you were shy to ask them here, you know, just feel free to reach out to us and at sales@syskit.com and ask whatever you might need regarding this SPDocKit product or any other you might be interested in. So yeah, guys, it was a pleasure having you all here, and yeah, see you all next time. Oh, sorry, we actually have, I'm gonna do this one around. So we have one question that just popped up, Igor. Okay, so
Yeah, sure.
last one. So are you keeping the save XML configuration for AutoSP installer up to date?
We last updated this functionality, I believe, a couple of months ago, but if you have any issues, just reach us and we will take a look at it. But yeah, we try to keep it up to date. So
Yeah,
that
from what I can see from the name, Steve is our client. So yeah, I mean, if I remember correctly. So Steve, feel free to reach out to us if you are experiencing any issues with this, and we'll definitely help you out. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Wrapping out once again. Pleasure having you all here, guys, and see you next time.